When Karoline Leavitt stepped into the Fox News studio, the audience expected a sharp political interview from the White House press secretary, but her eyes were fixed on an old envelope with a red Vatican wax seal on the table. That moment would change everything. David Cross, excitement evident in his voice, opens the broadcast. "Good evening, America. Tonight with us, Karoline Leavitt, White House spokesperson." But Karoline, our viewers expected a political debate. Why is there a mysterious envelope in front of you? The camera zooms in on Karoline's face, her eyes tired but determined. "David, I'm not here for politics. I'm here because I made a promise to Pope Francis. A promise I'm going to keep tonight." David leans forward. "The Pope?" "Karoline, you have our complete attention." The story began 6 months ago in Rome. It started with a letter, she explains. No official letterhead, no stamp, just her name in handwriting she didn't recognize. The letter is brief. "Casa Santa Marta, midnight. Come alone." She thought it was a joke, she explains, because why would the Pope want to speak with a political aide from New Hampshire? That night she sat in a taxi through the dark streets of Rome. The taxi driver asked in broken English, "Signora, are you sure?" Vatican at night. Very unusual. Most strange, no. She nodded nervously, clutching the mysterious letter in her sweaty palm. At the Vatican walls, a priest waited in a dark robe, his face invisible in the shadow cast by the towering walls. "Signorina Leavitt? Follow me." In silence, he whispered, his voice barely audible. They reached a simple door where the priest knocked 3 times. Short, long, short. "Entra," came the voice of Pope Francis from within. Karoline stepped inside a small, austere room where Pope Francis sat at a simple wooden table, dressed in a gray cloak. His eyes were tired but penetrating. "Karoline, grazie for coming. I know this seems strange," he said, his voice carrying the weight of ages. "Holy Father, I don't understand why you asked me to come," she replied, her voice trembling slightly with nervousness and awe. The Pope stood and walked to the window overlooking Rome. The eternal city spread before them like a tapestry of lights and shadows. Because truth sometimes chooses an unexpected messenger, the church I love is being undermined from within. There are forces that use God's name to hide power, to corrupt what should be pure. He turned around, his face full of concern, lines of worry etched deep around his eyes. "I cannot bear this alone. When my voice is taken away, you must speak. You must be the light when darkness threatens to consume everything we hold sacred." He gave her the sealed envelope, pressing it into her hands with a solemnity that made her understand the gravity of the moment. "Open this only when I am no longer here. You will recognize the moment when it comes." Back in the studio, Karoline pauses, her hand resting on the envelope that has haunted her dreams for months. David asks, "And you've kept that envelope since then?" 6 months, in a safe at home. "But it wouldn't leave me alone," she responds while pulling photos from her briefcase. Dark, vague images that seem to shift in the studio lights. "The threats began 3 weeks after my return. First subtle. She shows a note. Speak and you lose what you love. Then more direct, she says, showing a second note. Truth is a knife that cuts both ways." David asks if she contacted the authorities. Who would believe me? A political aide claiming to guard papal secrets? They would have thought I was having a breakdown, that the pressure of Washington had finally gotten to me. She shows more photos. A black car parked outside her house for hours at a time, shadow figures in the White House corridor who seemed to disappear whenever she looked directly at them, strangers who watched her from coffee shops and bus stops. The paranoia began consuming me. I barely slept. My husband would find me at 3 in the morning, staring out the window, checking the locks for the 5th time. He asked what was wrong, but how do you explain that you're guarding papal secrets? How do you tell the person you love most that you might be putting them in danger? The exhaustion is clearly visible on her face as she recounts the sleepless nights, the constant looking over her shoulder, the growing certainty that she was being watched by forces she couldn't understand. Then came the package that changed everything, she continues. She shows a silver cross, identical to the heirloom from her deceased grandmother that had been buried with her years ago. How could they have known about this cross? How could they have replicated it so perfectly? It was impossible, yet here it was, with a note. The time has come. Let the light speak. That night she had a dream unlike any other, she tells them. A vast, cold white hall where only she and the Pope stood at opposite ends. The space between them seeming infinite yet intimate. In that dream, Pope Francis said, "Caroline, truth is fire. It burns those who carry it, but it illuminates the world. Are you prepared to burn for what is right?" He reminded her of the young girl she once was, kneeling before the statue of Mary in her village church, praying for guidance and light when her grandmother was dying. That light is now yours. Do you dare to burn? She woke drenched in sweat, the dream feeling more real than reality itself, when her phone buzzed with a news alert that stopped her heart. Pope Francis had died peacefully in his sleep at Casa Santa Marta. The timing was too perfect, too orchestrated to be coincidence. She knew then that the moment had arrived, that her promise would have to be kept regardless of the consequences. "And so I'm here to keep my promise," Karoline says in the studio, where millions of viewers are watching, hanging on every word. She pulls out a small knife engraved with a cross and worn smooth by generations of her family's hands. "My grandmother's knife. She taught me that truth sometimes hurts, but it's always necessary. She used to say that courage isn't the absence of fear, but acting despite that fear." She breaks the seal, the sound echoing through the studio like a gunshot in the silence. With slightly trembling hands, she unfolds the letter and reads aloud. "Caroline, I write to you with a heavy heart. The church I love is being undermined from within by those who use God's name to hide power and corruption. Seek the name Selinari. They whisper salvation but bring emptiness. They wear robes but their words are blades. Find them before they turn faith into shadow and hope into despair." She pulls a black USB drive from her coat pocket, holding it up to the camera. "This was sent months after our meeting. No return address, no postmark that could be traced. Only this." Grainy footage appears on the screens. Men in black robes, whispering in Latin in a room adorned with ancient tapestries and symbols that seem to pulse with malevolent energy. A voice on the video says, "Selinari, tempus ad est," the words carrying an ominous weight that chills the studio air. The footage shows rituals that seem anything but holy, gatherings that pervert the sacred into something dark and twisted. Suddenly chaos erupts behind the scenes. Glass shatters, doors slam shut with violent force, and shouts can be heard from the production area. "They want to silence me, but I made a promise to a dying man, a holy man who trusted me with the truth," Karoline says calmly while security rushes to the sides and David tries to regain control of what has become the most extraordinary broadcast in television history. "We're having technical difficulties," he says, but Karoline looks directly into the camera, her voice steady and clear. "This is bigger than me. This is about truth, faith, and power working in the shadows. And I say now, no more silence, no more hiding. The light must shine." Sirens wail outside as online the story spreads like wildfire across social media platforms, news websites, and messaging apps around the world. Her phone buzzes with a final message. "Selinari is not the enemy. Find us where the flame ignites." The cryptic words hint at layers of conspiracy deeper than anyone could imagine. The next morning, a wooden rosary lay on her doorstep with the familiar scent of incense, beeswax, and old church pews. Smells that transported her back to childhood masses and whispered prayers. A note alongside read, "We live. You are almost where you need to be. The truth has many guardians." Because truth has no path backward, only forward into whatever light or darkness awaits those brave enough to seek it. The Vatican's secrets had found their voice in an unlikely messenger, and the world would never be the same. In the distance, church bells began to chime midnight, their ancient song carrying across the sleeping city like a promise that some truths, once spoken, can never be silenced again.